This is Kate Swoboda, creator of YourCourageousLife.com, director of the Courageous Living Coach certification at TeamCLCC.com, and author of the book, The Courage Habit, which is available at booksellers and at Amazon. The Your Courageous Life podcast is all about going after what you want and creating and living a more courageous, emotionally resilient life. Might drop a couple of F-bombs, so maybe don't listen with your kids in the backseat of the car. And here we go with today's episode. Hey friends! Today I'm talking about getting your energy back. It's kind of a topic that I've touched on in a number of different Your Courageous Life episodes in different ways, and today I'll really just be devoting an entire episode to getting your energy back. I actually have a webinar I did a few years ago about getting your energy back, and I still think that many of the things that are in that webinar are going to be making their way into today's podcast episode, but particularly with coming from this pandemic year that we've all been in together, there's a way that it's like, okay, my energy has necessarily gone to doom scrolling. And I do say necessarily. I mean, I realize that there are some people who feel very strongly that we just shouldn't even be doom scrolling and like just get off and don't even read or listen to news headlines at all because it'll bring you down. And for me and for most of the people that I associate with, that just doesn't work, because not being informed of the issues so that I personally remain unbothered by them, that doesn't feel in alignment or in integrity for me. I want to be a citizen of the world who is informed about the very real concerns that we are all facing, because I want to be part of trying to change it in whatever way I can. And I know that there are people who come from that perspective of don't even pay attention to news headlines, who would say, you know, you can't change it. I mean, what are you going to do? Run for office? But I do believe that we can. I believe it's a form of changing things when we share about the issues. So we can say, hey, call your representatives. I think it's a form of change when we call our representatives. I think it's a form of change when we vote with our dollars. I think it's a form of change when we educate ourselves so that other people don't have to emotionally labor on our behalf. So for me, it is not an option to just simply say, I'm going to stick my head in the sand or my fingers in my ears and go, la, 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 I can't hear you, about the things that really siphon away our energy and the stresses that siphon away our energy. And I also think that this podcast episode is worth doing on getting your energy back, because self-responsibility around our energy is important. I mean, I get it. There are things that I do believe pull our focus, or that are really, really hard to resist in terms of pulling our focus. But at the end of the day, my energy, how much mental, emotional, physical energy I have, is the direct result, 90% of it at least, of the choices I'm making. And there might be 10% that is something biochemical. There might be 10% that is something that's going on outside of me that I'm just really, it's like, obviously if someone slaps me in the face, some energy is going to go to that. Okay. But most of the time, I think we need to remember that we are the ones determining what we give our attention to and how we are giving our attention to other things. And we are the ones who need to decide, do I want to be proactive about this issue, or do I want to be reactive? And choosing not to be proactive is essentially making a choice to be reactive, because at some point, that's where we all end up. So today's podcast episode, get your energy back. I see energy as being about two parts that need to be addressed. One is the physical part of energy. Two is the mental part of energy. And with these physical and mental parts of the energy that we feel, the job of getting our energy back is to both eliminate energy leaks and also to fortify and create strength. So physical energy, mental energy, how do we eliminate energy leaks so that we can keep more of the energy we already have? How do we fortify ourselves to create strength, to, in essence, create ourselves as sources of renewable energy? I'm going to start with physical pieces first, okay? Physical sources of energy. They're going to be pretty obvious, and I will not belabor the points. One of them is going to be, do you have a consistent bedtime? Super basic. Do you go to bed and wake up at about the same time every day? Are you practicing appropriate sleep hygiene? You're not having caffeine before bed. You're not on a tablet or a device before bed. You're not wasting energy with excuses about why you have to be on a tablet or device that's interrupting your sleep before bed. All of that. So consistent bedtime. And I have another podcast episode I just recorded about how to create some health habits for yourself in the realms of things like sleep. It's going to touch on sleep, food, and exercise. And you can refer to that podcast for more ideas when it comes to energy. Food. If you are constantly inhaling sugar-laden foods, you are setting yourself up for crashes because the insulin fluctuates and the cortisol fluctuates. Insulin is a hormone. People don't realize that. Insulin is a hormone, and it has an effect on your mood, and it has an effect on your energy, and it has an effect on your concentration. So everybody has different needs, and I'm not here to dictate what people should or should not eat. But let's just generally kind of agree that too much caffeine, too much sugar, not a good thing. More vegetables, generally a thumbs up. So whatever else you're doing, if you're paleo or you're doing an autoimmune protocol or you're vegan or you're you do you. But just generally, caffeine, sugar, and alcohol converts to a sugar in the body. So that's sugar. Those sorts of things will influence your energy. Alcohol in particular can also influence sleep patterns. So if you are always having wine and winding down the end of the night with some kind of a drink, that is going to affect how deeply and how well you sleep. And then exercise. Not going to belabor this point either. You don't need to become a marathoner to have more energy. Exercise, pretty basic, comes down to really about 20 minutes of exercise a day. Maybe a little bit more. I think some studies say at least 30 minutes, but 20 minutes of exercise a day. Walking is exercise. Push-ups are exercise. And then the only other thing I'll throw in there that I find to be a physical component that's really helpful for getting your energy back is there is a not too well-known genetic condition called MTHFR. Well, that's the acronym. The actual word for it is this really long word that I can't pronounce, so I'm not going to try. But MTHFR, it's a genetic mutation, and a person can have a partial mutation or a full mutation. Now, if you have the full mutation, you almost certainly know about it because you basically will have crippling exhaustion. But a lot of people have the partial mutation. I have the partial mutation, which I ended up finding out because I, in true nerd form, had like a DNA profile run and then found out which DNA SNPs, single nucleopeptides, I think is SNPs, were coded for MTHFR, and then like looked up those SNPs in my profile and like figured out, oh, I have the partial mutation. What happens to you if you have MTHFR? Your body has problems converting B vitamins to the form that can actually be used. So you can eat B vitamins, and if you have the partial or full mutation of MTHFR, your body has trouble actually turning that into energy. Certainly talk to your doctor about all this, but I found that it was a very simple fix. I take methylated B12 supplements in the morning. So instead of taking a typical B12 or B spectrum vitamin, I take a methylated B12. Talk to your doctor. I'm not a doctor. I don't even play one on TV. This is just a podcast done by a life coach who has no medical credentials whatsoever. So talk to your doctor. Have I said talk to your doctor enough? But that is what I did, and that is something that is on the physical realm, and I'm a vegetarian. I do a plant-based diet. I know a lot of people talk about, I can't do a vegetarian or plant-based diet because I get really tired. And to that I say, find out if you have either the partial or full mutation of MTHFR, because that might be why. And there's no amount of meat anybody can eat that's going to cover over a genetic mutation. So that's what I do. Those are the physical things: consistent bedtime, food, exercise. And again, my other podcast episode gets into each of these and creating each of these as a healthy habit in more detail. Let's go to getting your energy back on the mental level. On the mental level. Mentally, where can you eliminate leaks? Mentally, where can you fortify yourself mentally so that you create more strength? Because from that place of fortifying yourself, you will create more mental strength, and that gives you energy. When we talk about mental leaks, we're talking about things like, for instance, constantly thinking that you aren't enough. Constantly having an inner loop of internal self-criticism that you aren't dealing with. And it becomes a leak both because those sorts of ruminative thoughts will take energy away from you because energy is being devoted to ruminative thoughts, and those ruminative thoughts will start to prime you to feel more tired. So mental leaks happen when we don't really put a lot of consciousness on our thoughts. And you'll particularly find that there's a mental leak happening if a lot of your energy is going to trying to stuff down or ignore thoughts that are coming to you. You would always rather deal with the stuff that you're thinking in the background than just let it fly in the background. If you have a job that you know on some level just ain't particularly working out for you, it is always better to just go ahead and confront the fact that this job just really does not feel like a match and just deal with that. Face it head on. Maybe you can't leave now. Maybe you won't be able to leave ever in your estimation. I would, if we were in a coach-client relationship, I'd challenge you on that. And I'd say, well, let's look at if that's really true and what all goes into that. But it's not about whether or not you leave. You're actually losing more energy trying to ignore facing the question of, I don't like my job, what am I going to do, than you are just facing the question, I don't like my job, what am I going to do? So when we have these things going on in the background, these mental ruminations, when we either don't want to deal with them or intentionally are just like, I am not going to think about that right now, it still takes up space. I think of it sometimes as being like a computer that has background processes happening. If there is a software on your computer that is eating up a lot of your memory, your random access memory, which is part of what gives your computer power and speed, if you don't turn off that software and it's just always running in the background, even if you're in a different program, it's still taking resources from your computer. It is still going to slow down the overall processing of the rest of what's happening on your computer. And you can not see what's happening with the microchips and the da-da-da. I'm not a computer person. I mean, beyond knowing how to function one. I don't know all the internal workings, but you might not see it all happening, but it is. It's going on in the background and it's taking up bandwidth. So deal with the stuff rather than not deal with the stuff. So ask yourself right now, what are some things in my life that are not really feeling all that great to me? Marriage, parenting, work, your physical health, dealing with your in-laws, a friendship that has undergone some kind of a shift, having a dream of going after something, traveling to a new place, writing a book, building something, and feeling insecure about whether or not that will ever happen. What are all those thoughts? What are all those thoughts that you try to push down, try to push away, tell yourself you'll think about that later. Now's not the right time to think about that. I'm going to have to deal with that later. Because every time you're pushing it away, you're actually giving it more energy. That's the paradox. We think we're pushing it away to give ourselves more room. We're actually pushing it away and infusing it with energy because we're putting all that effort into pushing it away. Another place to look at that will cause a mental energy leak that depletes your overall energy, your overall vitality, your overall feeling of like, oh, I feel awake, alert, excited, eager, interested, curious, available for my life, would be fear patterns. In The Courage Habit, which is my book, I talk about 4 dominant fear patterns: perfectionism, people-pleasing, sabotage, and pessimism. You can see with not too much effort how those will drain you if they are constantly running in the background of your life because you aren't dealing with them. Perfectionism is constantly, I'm not enough, it should be better, I want to work harder, it's got to, that's of course exhausting. People-pleasing. I'm selfish if I don't do what they want me to do. Well, a lifetime of doing what everybody else wants you to do will deplete you. Self-sabotage. That's exhausting. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Making progress on something and then getting shiny object syndrome and abandoning your progress to go to something else only to realize, oh no, I should have followed through. That is exhausting. And pessimism, which is, why bother? Somebody else already did it. They probably did it better. I'm not the kind of person who can. I wasn't raised in such a way that I would ever be able to. Pessimism, totally a drain. I mean, you can hear it in my voice when I just even talk about what it feels like to be in that space. Now, with all of these fear patterns, don't get me wrong, I do them too. I get caught into fear patterns of perfectionism, people-pleasing, self-sabotage, pessimism. Those things come up for me too. But I get my energy back when I go, oh, okay, this conversation, got it. Now I'm understanding. I'm hearing it now. I'm totally going into a perfectionistic pattern. Let me stop. Let me interrupt this. Let me change course. That's not the direction I want to keep going around. That's where you start to take your energy back. When you take your energy back, you start to feel more sovereign, more like you are the one in charge of your life. Because, spoiler alert, you are. But when all these energy leaks are coming at you, and you're feeling the drain of the energy, then it's low motivation, low inspiration, a lot of pessimism, why bother, or a lot of being driven to do more, or a lot of people please. It's like when all that's spinning, of course it's really hard to see that you are the one who is in the driver's seat of your life. Now, what do you want to do with these, to eliminate these mental leaks? Well, that's where we get into fortification. How do we fortify you to create strength? Now, physically, you will start to fortify yourself when you have a consistent bedtime, when you are adding nourishment into your food, when you are getting some kind of regular movement. So you fortify yourself that way. The leaks physically come from an inconsistent bedtime, sugar, substances, all that, never exercising, sitting all day. That, of course, you're going to be tired there. And let's fortify you because you'll get more energy if you do the opposite. With mental leaks, very much the same thing. You eliminate the leaks when you start recognizing these are the places where energy is just going out the door because I'm giving the energy to thinking I'm not enough, to patterns of perfectionism, to running around trying to make everybody else happy other than myself. You fortify yourself when you stop and you say, no, this is not just going to continue unchecked. It's not about doing it perfectly. It's not about flipping a switch and saying, oh, I'm never going to do it again. You will do it again. You will leak energy again. Now pull it back. And for me, in the most immediate moment when I recognize, oh, oops, got into a fear pattern again, it's all about reframing. So maybe the energy leak is coming because the dominant thought in my head is there's too much to do and there's not enough time. There's too much to do and there's not enough time. There's too much to do. And it's like, hold on a minute. It's like a talking to myself. Kate, that thought is not giving you more time and that thought is not diminishing my to-do list. That might sound really odd to speak to oneself like that, but it's like I almost have a visual of some higher self within me just gently placing hands on my own shoulders and going, hold on a minute. Objectively speaking, is thinking the thought, there's too much to do and not enough time. There's too much to do. Is that helping anything? Is that giving me more time? No. Is that getting anything done? No. Now, note that I didn't say that voice is supposed to come in and go, God, why are you so stupid? It doesn't do anything. No, this is talking to yourself very directly, yet gently. When you are reframing something, direct yet gentle is the way. Direct, objective, let's tell the truth, and gentle. I get it. Of course you went into this space. It's an old habit to think that if I just ruminated on it enough, I'd figure some answer out. Not true. A lot of times what I need to do whenever I am stuck in that space of feeling like I'm ruminating with a thought, what I actually need is just like a breath. So, okay, it's stop. This isn't actually helpful. You're in a pattern. Got it. Okay. I'm in a self-sabotage pattern here. Now, what do you want to do about it? So it's like gently taking myself by the shoulders and going, this isn't helpful. And then now what do I want to do about it? And how do I want to reframe it? So a thought like there's too much to do and not enough time, reframes for me are things like, what is the next thing that I need to focus on? I can't do all the things all at the same time. So what is the next thing that I need to focus on? Or I'm going to take a 10-minute break and take a walk around the block. When I get back, I'll pick up with this task and see how far I can get. Or this is a great moment for me to remember right now that my worth is not dependent on the stuff I do or finishing anything off of my to-do list. I just gave several examples that are from my personal experience. Consider for yourself, where do you go when you feel most depleted? What's the most predominant thought that you have when you feel most exhausted, especially by your to-do list, especially by all the different news headlines coming in that are really scary, especially by really, really going, oh my goodness, like how much more of this pandemic are we going to be dealing with here? This podcast episode is going to be relevant long after the pandemic because we are a culture of people who do too much. And when we do too much, especially when we're doing too much of the wrong things, the things that don't actually light us up, we deplete our own energy. We forget. We're never getting those minutes back. Let's make sure that the things that we're spending our time on are the things that we actually want to be spending our time on, that we want to look back at the end of a long, happy life and say, yeah, that was what I wanted to spend time doing. I feel very fortunate that I am in that kind of a case. My to-do list, I can't think of a single day running this business when my to-do list has not had more on it that I could have gotten done. So I have come to accept that and decided that what I need to do to get my energy back, to not be depleted by thoughts like there's too much to do and not enough time, is not to figure out the perfect system for getting things done. It's not to scale back my dream and all that my business brings to the world and all the people I have the fortune to interact with. The choice I want to make is how do I reframe it and stop making it into a problem that there's always a to-do list and that it is never complete. Because if it's not a problem, there's a lot less stress. So that's just one example that I'm giving from my own life. I would love it if you'd take a moment right now to pause this podcast episode, of course, assuming that it's safe for you to do so, you're not driving, stuff like that, and just ask yourself, what are the energy drains in my life? Do I give energy away to relationships that do not lift me up? To a job that does not lift me up? Am I giving a lot of power to fearful thoughts about how I parent or friendships that are struggling or what my in-laws think of me? Am I giving a lot of time to what if this doesn't work out when I contemplate my personal dreams? I don't know what it is for you, obviously, for all the listeners that are out there, but what I do know is that if you can isolate what it looks like for you when the energy starts to deplete, you can start to find the places where you've got a leak that you can plug, and you can start to find the places where you can reframe things to begin fortifying and creating more strength. When you eliminate the leaks, you keep the reserve you have. When you fortify, you preserve yourself for when times are hard. A similar kind of example would be how we use money. If you find the places in your finances where you have money leaks and you're spending on little subscriptions all over the place that you really don't want to be spending on, if you can plug that, you have more in reserve. And the more you are putting in reserve, the more you fortify yourself for those times when there's a financial cul-de-sac and you're kind of going, whoa, I'm spinning, I'm stuck, I'm not going anywhere. It's a very similar kind of thing with energy. And I want all of us to really remember that unlike money, which comes from jobs and an exchange of time for work and things like that, at any moment you can take your energy back. You don't have to wait for a pay raise. You don't have to wait for the financial situation to change in the global economy. When it's your personal energy, you can take it back and you can be the one who decides, I'm just not going to let energy leak away from me with these little things all over the place anymore. And I'm going to actively look at my patterns. I'm going to actively reframe so that I can fortify and strengthen myself so that I have even more energy that I'm generating. I want to leave today's podcast episode by making an acknowledgement that when you are tired, emotionally tired, and you can't even tell anymore what's emotional and what's physical, the first place to start, I think, is to just slow down. And it feels when you're being asked to slow down as if you're going to lose something really big. And I'm speaking from personal experience here. The first couple times that anybody ever said, Kate, you need to slow down, you need to dial it back, all of that, I'm sitting here like, you're crazy. I've got ambition. I've got things I want to do. The only way to get through this is to hustle, not to slow down. But the type of slowing down that people were encouraging me to do, I would finally figure out, was not about no longer having goals or ambition or ideas that I wanted to put out in the world. The type of slowing down I was being invited into was a slowing down to be more conscious, to be more aware. It was not about you are no longer allowed to have big dreams that you go after and you have to give up having a to-do list. It was more about, hold on a minute, because if you just slow down to examine where you're leaking energy and where there are opportunities that are being missed to fortify and create strength, create more energy, if you will just slow down to do that work, you will truly come ahead. So my invitation to you is to try it, to really commit to, hey, if the old way of doing things hasn't been working, it's time for me to try a new way of getting my energy back. I can always go back to the old way, but if I know that the old way just hasn't been working, it's time to try something new. So hopefully this is giving you some ideas for how you can create more energy in your life. And as always, the invitation when you're talking to a life coach is, let's get into it now. No time like the present. You don't need to wait until you've got like another Monday. Just get in there and start going, all right, well, it's time to start plugging these energy leaks. It's time to start having more energy in my life. All right, that's today's podcast. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. You know you can continue the work and the fun if you want to. Head on over to yourcourageouslife.com/begin and become a Your Courageous Life subscriber, because as soon as you sign up, you get access to an entire library of worksheets and audios and other bonuses. And of course, you'll be receiving more courage in your inbox. And who wouldn't love that? You can learn more about the Courageous Living Coach certification at teamclcc.com. You can get the Courage Habit at your local bookseller, on Amazon, wherever you like. We can even connect on social media. I'm on Facebook at Your Courageous Life. So look for facebook.com/Your Courageous Life. And I'm on Instagram as Kate Courageous. And I'd love to connect with you on Instagram. So here's to you, using these courageous tools in your life and creating a real ripple effect of good. And again, thanks so much for listening. I love it that you're here.